CEO mocked veteran single dad's disability. His Delta Force past made her apologize in tears. She laughed at his limp in front of everyone. But when chaos struck and the broken man revealed the past he'd been hiding, her cruel smirk shattered into tears of regret. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the small kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the worn wooden table where Jack Dawson stood making pancakes. His cane leaned against the counter within easy reach, a constant reminder of the life he'd left behind. The familiar scent of coffee and maple syrup filled their modest apartment as he flipped another golden brown circle onto a plate. "Daddy, you made them look like Mickey Mouse again." Lily's delighted giggle warmed his heart as she bounced into the kitchen, her backpack already slung over one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled into slightly uneven pigtails. She'd insisted on doing them herself this morning. "Only the best for my princess," Jack smiled, trying to hide the nervous energy coursing through his body. The job interview at Steel Logistics weighed heavily on his mind, but he wouldn't let it dampen Lily's spirits. As they sat down to eat, Jack watched his daughter drowning her pancakes in syrup. "Easy there, sweetheart. We don't want you bouncing off the walls in class today." "I'm just excited for you, Daddy," Lily beamed, syrup already forming a sticky mustache above her lip. "You're going to do great at your interview. I just know it." Jack's throat tightened with emotion. Since losing her mother, Lily had become his biggest cheerleader. "Thank you, baby girl. I'm going to make today count, I promise." After dropping Lily off at school, Jack parked his old sedan in the towering shadow of the Steel Logistics building. The gleaming glass structure seemed to touch the clouds, making him feel small and out of place in his carefully pressed suit from the thrift store. He gripped his cane, took a deep breath, and made his way inside. The lobby was all chrome and marble, his uneven footsteps echoing across the polished floor. The security guard directed him to the executive floor with a kind smile that helped settle his nerves slightly. "Mr. Dawson," a young receptionist greeted him. "Miss Steele will see you now." Jack hadn't expected to meet the CEO directly. He'd prepared for a standard HR interview, but he straightened his shoulders and followed the receptionist into a vast corner office. Victoria Steele stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to the door. She was younger than he'd expected, probably in her early 30s, wearing a tailored black suit that screamed power and privilege. "So," she said without turning around, "you're the veteran applying for the logistics position." Her tone dripped with disdain. "Yes, ma'am," Jack replied evenly, maintaining his military courtesy. "I have extensive experience coordinating complex operations and—" "Save it." She spun around, her sharp features twisted in a smirk. "Do you really think a broken soldier with a cane could handle the fast-paced environment of modern corporate logistics?" The words hit like physical blows, but Jack kept his expression neutral. "My injury doesn't affect my ability to—" "Please." Victoria cut him off again, walking around her desk to stand directly in front of him. "This isn't some military charity operation. We need people who can keep up, not slow us down." "Looking at you," she gestured dismissively at his cane, "I see damaged goods." Jack's knuckles whitened around the handle of his cane, but years of military discipline kept his voice steady. "With respect, Miss Steele, you're judging me based on—" A small gasp from the doorway stopped him cold. Jack's heart sank as he turned to see Lily standing there, clutching a piece of paper in her trembling hands. Her eyes were wide with shock and brimming with tears. "Lily," Jack moved toward her. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" I made you a good luck drawing," she whispered, her lower lip quivering. "The nice lady at the front desk said I could bring it up, but—" She looked at Victoria, then back at her father, hurt and confusion written across her young face. Victoria's expression flickered for a moment before hardening again. "This is a place of business, not a daycare center. Security will escort both of you out." Jack reached for Lily's hand, his throat tight with humiliation, but his head held high. "That won't be necessary. We can see ourselves out." The drive home was heavy with silence. Jack could feel Lily's eyes on him, could sense her struggling to understand why someone would be so cruel to her daddy, her hero. The drawing she'd made lay crumpled in her lap, forgotten. At a red light, Lily's small hand found his. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, baby?" Jack managed, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You're still my hero, Daddy." The simple words pierced straight through his heart. Jack squeezed her hand gently, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. They sat there at the red light, father and daughter, their joined hands a quiet defiance against the world's harsh judgments. The light turned green, and Jack guided their car forward, leaving the towering shadow of Steel Logistics behind them. Lily's words echoed in his mind, a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from proving others wrong, but from the unwavering faith of those who love you most. The morning after the disastrous interview, Jack sat at the kitchen table, staring at his laptop screen. Job listings scrolled endlessly before his tired eyes. His coffee had gone cold, forgotten beside a stack of printed resumes. The apartment felt especially quiet with Lily already off to school, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He ran a hand through his short-cropped hair, military habits still showing in its neat trim. The rejection at Steel Logistics cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Victoria Steele's words echoed in his mind. Broken soldier. His fingers tightened around his coffee mug. The wall clock ticked steadily, marking time as Jack's cursor hovered over another job posting. His leg ached, a constant companion since his injury. The pain seemed worse today, perhaps from the stress, or maybe from standing too long during yesterday's interview. "I promised Lily," he muttered, forcing himself to sit straighter. His daughter's face flashed in his mind, her brave little smile as she squeezed his hand after the interview. She believed in him completely, without question. He couldn't let her down. The phone's sudden ring startled him. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Jack Dawson speaking," he answered, his voice professional despite his uncertainty. "Mr. Dawson, this is Alan Rodriguez, COO of Steel Logistics." The voice was warm, with an underlying strength that commanded attention without demanding it. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "No, sir. Not at all." "Good. I've been looking at your file, and I'm very impressed with your background. 20 years in Delta Force, specialized in tactical logistics and team leadership. Multiple commendations for grace under pressure." Jack shifted in his chair, surprised by the man's thorough knowledge of his service record. "Yes, sir. Though I wasn't aware my file was still under consideration." A gentle chuckle came through the line. "Let's just say a colleague thought I should take a look. Would you be interested in coming in to discuss a different position? Operations manager for our Western Division." Jack's breath caught. The position was several steps up from what he'd initially applied for. "Sir, I appreciate the consideration, but after yesterday's interview—" "Yesterday's interview doesn't concern me, Mr. Dawson," Alan interrupted smoothly. "I'm more interested in your capabilities. Your military experience shows you can handle complex logistics under extreme pressure. That's exactly what we need." "Thank you, sir." Jack's voice remained steady, though his hand gripped the phone tighter. "I'd be very interested in discussing the position." "Excellent. Can you come in this afternoon at 2? "Yes, sir, I'll be there." After hanging up, Jack sat back, his mind racing. The opportunity seemed almost too good to be true. But there was something about Alan Rodriguez's voice, a genuine quality, that rang true. The second interview proved entirely different from the first. Alan's office was warm and welcoming, with photos of family mixed among the business awards on his walls. The COO himself rose to greet Jack, showing no reaction to the cane except to gesture to a comfortable chair nearby. "Tell me about your approach to team leadership, Jack," Alan said, settling behind his desk. His dark eyes were sharp but kind, reading more than just Jack's words. For the next hour, they discussed logistics, leadership, and the challenges of managing complex operations. Alan listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that drew out Jack's experience without dwelling on his disability. "The position would report directly to me," Alan explained, leaning forward. "It's challenging work, long hours sometimes, but it's also a chance to make a real difference in how this company operates." Jack met his gaze steadily. "Sir, I'm not afraid of hard work. All I'm asking for is a fair chance to prove myself." Alan nodded, satisfaction crossing his features. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." He extended his hand. "Welcome to Steel Logistics, Jack." Later that evening, Jack sat on the edge of Lily's bed, watching as she snuggled under her favorite butterfly blanket. Her room was a splash of color against the apartment's plain walls. Drawings, school projects, and photos, creating a bright collage of their life together. "Guess what, sweetheart?" he said, smoothing back her dark hair. Remember how we were talking about God having a plan, even when things seemed tough? Lily nodded, her eyes bright with curiosity. Well, I got a job today. A really good one, even better than what I interviewed for yesterday. Lily's face lit up with pure joy. She threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him off balance. See? God's helping us. Jack hugged her back, a faint smile touching his lips. Her simple faith touched something deep in his heart, rekindling a spark of hope he thought he'd lost. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was the fresh start they'd been praying for. Time for sleep, princess, he said, gently tucking her back under the covers. I love you. Love you too, Daddy, she mumbled, already drifting off, a contented smile on her face. Monday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. Jack adjusted his navy tie in the hallway mirror, his movements careful and measured. The new charcoal suit felt stiff, but it gave him confidence, a armor of sorts for the corporate battlefield ahead. Got your lunch packed, sweetie? He called out, checking his watch. Lily bounded down the stairs, her backpack bouncing. Yes, Daddy. Mrs. Whitaker made extra cookies for both of us. Right on cue, their elderly neighbor appeared at the front door, her silver hair neatly styled and a warm smile lighting up her face. Ready for the big day, Jack? Mrs. Whitaker asked, enveloping Lily in a quick hug. As ready as I'll ever be, ma'am. Jack gripped his cane, grateful for its solid support. Mrs. Whitaker patted his arm. Now don't you ma'am me, young man. You'll do just fine. The Lord didn't bring you this far to leave you now. Jack managed a small smile, touched by her unwavering faith. He knelt down carefully to hug Lily goodbye, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Be good for Mrs. Whitaker, okay? I will. Lily squeezed him tight. Show them how awesome you are, Daddy. The drive to steal logistics felt different this time. Instead of dread, Jack felt determination coursing through him. The gleaming skyscraper loomed ahead, but today, it wasn't just a symbol of corporate power. It was his new workplace. Security directed him to human resources, where a friendly woman named Patricia helped him with paperwork. Mr. Rodriguez specifically requested you for operations, she mentioned, her eyes kind. That's quite impressive. Jack's new office was modest but clean, with a window overlooking the city. As he arranged his few personal items, a photo of Lily, his service medal in its simple frame, other employees began dropping by. Hey, you must be Jack. A young man with bright eyes stuck his head in. I'm Dave from IT. Need help setting up your computer? Before long, Jack found himself surrounded by welcoming faces. Sarah from accounting brought him coffee. Marcus, a fellow veteran who worked in security, shared stories about their service days. Each interaction helped ease the knot of tension in Jack's shoulders. His military training served him well as he tackled his first assignment. When the shipping software crashed, threatening to delay crucial deliveries, Jack calmly organized the team into groups, implementing a manual tracking system until IT could fix the problem. That was quick thinking, Dave said admiringly. Most new people would have panicked, Jack shrugged. In Delta Force, we learned to adapt fast. Same principle applies here. Assess, plan, execute. Word of his efficient solutions spread quickly through the office. By lunch, several department heads had stopped by to introduce themselves. Jack's quiet competence and respectful demeanor left a strong impression. However, not everyone celebrated his success. On the executive floor, Victoria Steele paced her corner office like a caged tiger. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floor as she confronted her COO. Alan, explain to me why that disabled veteran is now working in operations. Her voice dripped with barely contained fury. I explicitly rejected his application. Alan Rodriguez remained seated, his expression neutral. Jack Dawson's qualifications are exceptional. His military leadership experience... Leadership? Victoria scoffed. He can barely walk. This isn't a charity, Alan. I won't have him dragging down our performance metrics. With all due respect, Alan's tone hardened slightly. Hiring decisions are part of my responsibility. Mr. Dawson's already proven valuable this morning by preventing a major shipping delay. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. We'll see about that, she muttered as she stormed out. We'll certainly see. Throughout the afternoon, Jack focused on learning company procedures and meeting his team members. He noticed some curious glances at his cane, but unlike that first interview, there was no mockery, just professional courtesy and growing respect. By day's end, his inbox contained several thank you emails from colleagues he'd helped. Jack shut down his computer with a sense of satisfaction he hadn't felt in months. The job wouldn't be easy, but he had a fighting chance. That evening, Jack and Lily sat at their small kitchen table, sharing meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Her eyes sparkled as he described his day. And then Marcus, he was a Marine, showed me where the best coffee machine is, Jack explained between bites. Everyone's been really kind. That's because I asked God to send you nice people, Lily declared proudly, pushing her peas around her plate. Mrs. Whitaker helped me pray for it yesterday. Jack's throat tightened with emotion. You did that for me? Of course, Daddy, and it worked, she beamed at him. Did you meet any other nice people? Jack thought about Victoria's cold fury when she'd spotted him in the hallway, the way she'd turned sharply on her heel to avoid him, but he wouldn't burden Lily with that. Lots of 'em, sweetheart. There's Patricia in HR, and Dave from IT, and Sarah. See? God sent you a whole bunch of friends. Lily reached across the table to squeeze his hand. I knew he would. Jack squeezed back, marveling at his daughter's simple faith. Despite Victoria's obvious hostility, despite the challenges ahead, he felt truly grateful. This job was more than just a paycheck. It was a chance to show Lily that her daddy could still make her proud. You were right, honey, he said softly. God did send some good people today. 1 week into his new job at Steel Logistics, Jack stood in front of his bedroom mirror, tugging at the slightly ill-fitting sleeves of his rented tuxedo. The black fabric had a subtle shine that betrayed its age, and the shoulders felt a touch too tight. But it was the best he could manage on short notice. Hold still, Daddy. Lily perched on his bed, her legs swinging as she watched him fuss with his appearance. In her small hands, she clutched a homemade tie clip, a simple metal bar decorated with careful swirls of blue paint and tiny stick-on crystals. I made it special for tonight. Jack turned to her with a gentle smile. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Are you sure you want me to wear it to such a fancy party? Of course! Lily hopped off the bed and approached him with determination. It'll bring you good luck, plus it matches your eyes. She reached up on her tiptoes to clip it onto his black tie, her tongue poking out in concentration. Mrs. Whitaker appeared in the doorway, ready for another evening of babysitting. My, don't you look handsome, Jack? That tie clip is quite the statement piece. Jack chuckled, touching the clip with careful fingers. My daughter's quite the artist. The drive to the Metropolitan Hotel felt longer than usual. Jack's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he rehearsed proper etiquette in his head. This charity gala would put him in direct contact with the company's highest executives, including Victoria Steel. The hotel's grand entrance was lit up with spotlights, and valets rushed to park expensive cars. Jack handed his keys to a young attendant, trying not to feel self-conscious about his modest sedan among the luxury vehicles. His cane clicked against the marble steps as he made his way inside. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and floating champagne glasses. Jack found himself a quiet corner, nodding politely to passing colleagues. He couldn't help but notice Victoria across the room, commanding attention in a striking red gown as she chatted with investors. The first sign of trouble came as a low rumble from outside. Jack's military instincts perked up at the sound of angry voices, growing louder. Through the tall windows, he could see a crowd gathering on the street, their protest signs illuminated by the hotel's exterior lights. Anti-corporate parasites, one executive huffed, peering through the glass. Security will handle them. But Jack recognized the shifting energy in the crowd. He'd seen it before in war zones. The protesters were getting bolder, angrier. He quietly began noting exit routes and counting security personnel. The situation escalated in seconds. A rock sailed through the air, shattering one of the grand windows with an explosive crash. Glass rained down as screams erupted throughout the ballroom. More rocks followed, and the crowd outside surged toward the broken window. Everyone move away from the windows. Jack's voice cut through the chaos, deep and commanding. Without hesitation, he began directing people toward the safer interior of the room. His military training kicked in automatically. Assess, protect, control. The east exit is clear, he shouted to the security team. Start evacuating people through there. The guards responded to his natural authority, falling into formation. Through the panicked crowd, Jack spotted Victoria Steele. She had been backed into a corner by rushing guests, her face pale with fear. As he watched, she stumbled in her high heels, falling to the ground as people pushed past her. Jack moved swiftly, his cane forgotten against a wall. The old injury screamed in protest, but he ignored it, weaving through the chaos with practiced efficiency. He reached Victoria just as several people nearly trampled her. "Ma'am, take my hand." He positioned himself between her and the panicking crowd, extending his arm. Victoria stared up at him, recognition flickering in her eyes. For a moment, she hesitated, pride warring with fear on her face. Another surge of people made the decision for her. She grabbed his hand, and Jack pulled her up, tucking her securely against his side. "Keep your head down," he instructed, shielding her with his body as he guided them through the crowd. A security guard had fallen near the broken window, clutching his arm where glass had cut him. Jack steered Victoria to safety first, then returned for the injured man. "Can you walk?" he asked, already sliding an arm under the guard's shoulders. "Yes, sir." The guard managed through gritted teeth. Jack helped him up, scanning the room for any other people in danger. The security team had managed to block the broken window, and police sirens wailed in the distance. The evacuation was proceeding more smoothly now, panic giving way to ordered chaos. He guided the injured guard toward the emergency medical team that had just arrived. As he turned away, he found Victoria watching him from across the room. Their eyes met, and he saw something shift in her expression. Shock, confusion, and perhaps a hint of shame. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of police statements and medical checks. By the time Jack finally made it home, his leg was throbbing fiercely, but his mind was clear. He found Lily still awake, waiting for him with Mrs. Whitaker. "Daddy," she flew into his arms. "It's all over the news. Were you scared?" Jack hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Just doing what needed to be done, sweetheart." Lily pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with pride. She touched the paint-decorated tie clip, still perfectly in place despite everything. "See, Daddy," she whispered, "you're still a soldier." Mrs. Whitaker dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, watching them embrace. "That you are, Jack," she added softly. "That you are." Jack said nothing, just held his daughter closer. His leg ached, and his rented tuxedo was probably ruined, but none of that mattered. He had protected people tonight, not with a weapon, but with the same courage and clarity that had served him in uniform. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe being a soldier wasn't about the uniform at all. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Steel Logistics office building, catching dust motes in its golden rays. Jack stepped out of the elevator, his cane making a soft tap against the polished floor. He'd barely made it 3 steps when Sarah from accounting rushed over. "Jack, what you did last night was incredible." Her eyes sparkled with admiration. "The way you took charge during the chaos, simply amazing." Before Jack could respond, more colleagues gathered around. Tom from IT clapped him on the shoulder, and Maria from Human Resources beamed at him. The attention made Jack's neck flush red. "Just did what needed doing," he said quietly, trying to move toward his desk. "Are you kidding?" Tom exclaimed. "You saved Miss Steele's life, and probably dozens more people too." The security team said they'd never seen anyone handle a crisis so professionally. Word of Jack's actions had spread like wildfire through the building. As he made his way to his desk, people stopped to shake his hand or offer words of praise. Some shared stories they'd heard about his quick thinking and courage. Each compliment made Jack more uncomfortable. He'd never been one for spotlight. In her top-floor office, Victoria Steele paced like a caged tiger. Through her floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the cleanup crews removing the last traces of last night's chaos. Her jaw clenched as she remembered how Jack had swept her away from danger, his strong arms protecting her from the stampeding crowd. The memory of being saved by the very man she'd dismissed as damaged goods made her blood boil. "Miss Steele?" Her assistant poked her head in. "The board members are calling to check on you after last night's incident, and the local news wants a statement about the security breach." Victoria waved her away irritably. "Tell them I'm fine, and get Dawson up here, now." 10 minutes later, Jack stood before Victoria's desk, his face neutral and professional. She didn't offer him a seat. "Mr. Dawson," she said coldly, "while your actions last night were noteworthy. Let's be clear about your role here. You're a junior operations manager, nothing more. I have several urgent projects requiring immediate attention. She slid a thick stack of folders across her desk. These need to be completely reformatted and analyzed by tomorrow morning. All of them. The impossible deadline hung in the air between them. Jack glanced at the mountain of work, then back at Victoria. "Yes, ma'am," he said simply, gathering the folders. Throughout the day, Victoria piled on more tasks. She demanded he reorganize the entire supply chain database while simultaneously preparing presentations for 3 different departments. When he finished one task, she found fault with minor details and demanded complete revisions. During lunch, Alan Rodriguez found Jack in the break room, hunched over his work while others chatted and ate. "Got a minute?" Alan pulled up a chair, his kind eyes taking in Jack's tired face. "Not really, sir," Jack replied, gesturing at the stack of papers. "Miss Steele needs these by morning." Alan's expression softened. "I saw what happened last night, Jack. That was exceptional work, the kind of leadership we need more of around here." Jack looked up, meeting Alan's gaze. The older man continued, his voice low and sincere. "Victoria, she's fighting her own battles. Don't let her push you out. We need good people like you here." "Thank you, sir," Jack said quietly. "But I've faced worse than impossible deadlines." Alan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Just remember, you've got allies here, more than you know." Throughout the afternoon, Victoria's demands grew more unreasonable. She called Jack into pointless meetings, then criticized him for falling behind on her assignments. She made him fetch coffee for her entire executive team, watching with barely concealed satisfaction as he struggled to balance the drink carrier with his cane. But Jack remained steady, completing each task without complaint. His military training had taught him to endure, to focus on the mission rather than the obstacles. And his mission now was providing for Lily. When the office finally emptied that evening, Victoria stood at her window, watching Jack slowly make his way to his car in the parking lot. His limp was more pronounced after the long day, but his head was held high. Her reflection in the glass showed her frown deepening. Hours later, Jack stood in the doorway of Lily's bedroom, watching his daughter's peaceful sleep. Her long eyelashes fluttered against her cheeks, and her favorite stuffed elephant was tucked securely under one arm. A children's Bible lay open on her nightstand. She'd been reading it before bed, just like her mother used to do with her. The sight of Lily's innocent face strengthened his resolve. Victoria could pile on all the work she wanted, mock his disability, and try to break his spirit, but he wouldn't quit, not when his daughter's future depended on this job. He remembered the words on Lily's recent school artwork, proudly displayed on their refrigerator. "My daddy is my hero, because he never gives up." The simple faith in those words touched something deep in his soul. Jack reached down to adjust Lily's blanket, tucking it gently around her shoulders. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, a small smile playing on her lips as she dreamed. In the quiet darkness of her room, Jack reaffirmed his silent promise. He would endure whatever Victoria threw at him, not just for survival, but to show Lily that dignity and perseverance could overcome any obstacle. He thought about Alan's words of encouragement, the support of his co-workers, and most importantly, the unwavering love in Lily's eyes. These were worth more than Victoria's approval or the sting of her attempts to humiliate him. As he watched his daughter sleep, his determination solidified into something unshakable. Victoria Steele might be his boss, but she would not be the one to define his worth or decide his future. Jack's old pickup truck rumbled to a stop in front of Meadowbrook Elementary. The morning air was crisp, and colorful autumn leaves danced across the sidewalk. Lily sat quietly in the passenger seat, her pink backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Lily's big brown eyes met his. "Is the mean boss lady still mad at you, Daddy?" Jack's heart squeezed at the worry in her voice. He forced a reassuring smile. "Don't you worry about that. Adults sometimes take a while to work things out." "But it's not fair," Lily protested, her lower lip trembling. "You helped her. You were brave, just like when you were a soldier." Jack reached over and smoothed her dark hair, just like her mother's had been. "Life isn't always fair, honey. But that doesn't change who we are or what we believe in. Remember what Mommy used to say? Be kind anyway," Lily whispered, managing a small smile. "That's right. Now scoot. You don't want to be late for Mrs. Peterson's class." Lily leaned over and gave him a fierce hug before climbing out. Jack watched her skip up the steps, his chest tight with love and determination. Her worried glances stayed with him as he drove to work. At Steel Logistics, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably since the gala incident. As Jack limped through the lobby, leaning on his cane, Carlos, the security guard, gave him a warm salute. "Morning, Mr. Dawson. Thanks for the help with that new scanning system yesterday." "Anytime, Carlos. And please, it's just Jack." In the elevator, Sarah from accounting shifted her stack of files to shake his hand. "That reorganization plan you suggested for the filing system? Pure genius. Saved us hours of work." Jack smiled modestly. "Just something I learned in the service. Everything runs smoother when there's a clear system." Throughout the morning, similar interactions repeated themselves. Jack had always treated everyone with respect, from the maintenance staff to the senior analysts. Now, that genuine kindness was being returned tenfold. Jerry the janitor proudly showed him pictures of his son's baseball game. Maria from IT sought his advice on streamlining emergency protocols. Even some mid-level executives began stopping by his desk for informal consultations. Around noon, Jack was helping Dennis from the mailroom sort through a backed-up delivery when he felt it, that icy presence. Victoria Steele stood at the end of the hallway, watching. Her perfectly tailored suit and sharp heels radiated authority, but her eyes held something darker: fear. Jack straightened up, nodding politely. "Miss Steele." She didn't respond, just turned on her heel and stalked away. But within an hour, a new memo arrived in his inbox. His department would now require daily progress reports, submitted directly to her office by 5 p.m. sharp. "It's getting ridiculous," muttered Alan Rodriguez, the COO, when he stopped by Jack's desk later. "She's never required this level of micromanagement before." Jack kept his voice neutral. "I'll manage, sir." Alan shook his head. "You know what this is about, don't you? She's losing her grip. The board's noticed how the employees rally around you, your natural leadership style, your integrity. It threatens her command and control approach." "I'm not trying to threaten anyone," Jack said quietly. "I'm just doing my job the best way I know how." "That's exactly why people respect you," Alan replied. "Just watch your back. Victoria fights dirty when she's scared." Throughout the afternoon, Jack felt the weight of hostile eyes. Victoria seemed to materialize wherever he went, her clipboard like a weapon, noting every minor infraction. She reassigned his best team members, scheduled him for conflicting meetings, and criticized his reports in front of others. But Jack remembered his training. In Delta Force, he'd learned that sometimes the greatest victory was simply refusing to break. He kept his voice steady, his work impeccable, and his dignity intact. When Victoria snapped at him during a department meeting, he responded with calm professionalism. When she demanded last-minute changes to completed projects, he stayed late to accommodate them without complaint. The sun was setting when Jack finally pulled into his driveway. Mrs. Whitaker, their neighbor, had picked Lily up from school as usual. Through the kitchen window, he could see them working on what looked like a science project. Inside, the warm smell of chocolate greeted him. "We made hot cocoa," Lily announced proudly. "Mrs. Whitaker showed me how to use the microwave safely." "Thank you for watching her," Jack said to their elderly neighbor. Mrs. Whitaker patted his arm. "She's a joy. You're doing a wonderful job with her, Jack." Her kind eyes held understanding. "Don't let anyone tell you different." After she left, Jack settled at the kitchen table with Lily. Her science homework, building a model of the solar system, was spread across the surface. They worked together, sipping cocoa and hanging styrofoam planets while discussing her day. "Jenny said her mom told her you're a hero," Lily mentioned, carefully painting Neptune blue. "Because you helped people at the fancy party." Jack focused on attaching a ring to Saturn. "I just did what needed doing, that's all." "Is that why the mean boss lady is extra mean now? Because you helped even though she was mean first?" Jack set down the model planet and looked at his daughter's earnest face. Sometimes people get scared when others are kind to them, especially if they haven't been kind themselves. It makes them feel bad inside. So what do? You keep being kind anyway, and you don't quit, no matter how hard it gets. Jack reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. "No matter what, Daddy doesn't quit." Lily beamed at him, chocolate, mustache and all. "Promise?" "Promise." Monday mornings at Steel Logistics usually meant tired faces and sluggish movements, but Jack Dawson saw something different. He saw potential. The conference room was packed with his team members, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and worry over the massive inventory project Victoria had dumped on them last Friday. Jack stood at the front of the room, his cane resting against the table. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice carrying the calm authority that had served him well in the military. "I know this project looks impossible. Trust me, I've faced impossible before." He pulled out a whiteboard marker and began drawing a simple diagram. "In Delta Force, we broke down complex missions into manageable parts. That's exactly what we're going to do here." Sarah, from accounting, raised her hand timidly. "But Mr. Dawson, we've never handled anything this big before." Jack smiled warmly. "Call me Jack, and neither had I, until my first combat mission." He drew circles on the board, connecting them with lines. "Think of this as our mission map. Each circle is a position we need to cover. For the next 30 minutes, Jack assigned roles based on each person's strengths, just as he'd done with his military units. Marcus, you've got the sharpest eye for detail I've ever seen. You're our advanced scout, data verification." Marcus sat up straighter, pride flickering across his face. "Lisa, your organizational skills are exceptional. You're our base commander, coordinating communication between teams." Lisa, who usually stayed quiet in meetings, nodded with newfound confidence. One by one, Jack gave each team member a clear purpose, drawing on military terminology that somehow made their corporate task feel more meaningful. The energy in the room shifted from dread to determination. Meanwhile, across town at Meadowbrook Elementary, Lily sat at her desk, chewing thoughtfully on her pencil. Mrs. Thompson had assigned their class to write about my personal hero. While other kids wrote about superheroes or sports stars, Lily knew exactly who to write about. Her pencil moved across the paper. "My hero doesn't wear a cape or fly through the sky. He walks with a cane and sometimes limps when it rains. My hero is my daddy." Back at Steel Logistics, Jack's team had transformed. The office buzzed with focused energy as people moved between departments with purpose. Even the usually grumpy IT supervisor was caught smiling as he helped the accounting team set up their new tracking system. "I haven't seen this floor work so smoothly in years," Alan Rodriguez commented, watching from his office doorway. He'd been quietly observing Jack's leadership style, impressed by how naturally people responded to him. During lunch break, Jack found a sticky note on his desk with a simple message. "Thanks for believing in us, team." He tucked it carefully into his wallet, next to Lily's school photo. That afternoon, in Mrs. Thompson's class, Lily stood before her classmates, holding her essay with slightly trembling hands. "My daddy was a soldier who fought bad guys," she read, her voice growing stronger. "He got hurt protecting his friends, but that didn't stop him from being brave. Now he fights different battles at his new job, where some people are mean to him because he limps." The classroom grew quiet as Lily continued. "But Daddy never gets angry or mean back. He says that true strength isn't about being the toughest or the fastest. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Every morning he makes my breakfast and helps me with my homework, even when his leg hurts really bad. He never complains, and he always has time for my hugs." Mrs. Thompson wiped a tear from her corner of her eye as Lily finished. "My daddy is my hero because he shows me that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what you have to do anyway. He says God gives us strength when we need it most, and I believe him because I see it in my daddy every day." That evening, Mrs. Thompson made a copy of Lily's essay and sent it to Alan Rodriguez, who she knew from church. The next morning, Alan read it at his desk, deeply moved by the child's simple but powerful words. Throughout the week, copies of Lily's essay appeared on desks throughout the company. People read it during coffee breaks, shared it during lunch, and passed it along with knowing smiles. The words of a 10-year-old girl helped them see their quiet, limping manager in a new light. Jack remained unaware of his daughter's essay making its rounds. He was too focused on guiding his team, celebrating their small victories, and protecting them from Victoria's increasingly frustrated attempts to find fault with their work. That night, Jack arrived home later than usual, having stayed to help Marcus double-check some crucial numbers. Mrs. Whitaker, their neighbor who watched Lily after school, met him at the door with a gentle smile. "She tried to wait up for you," she whispered, gesturing toward the kitchen. Jack found Lily asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting on her arms. Under her hand lay several sheets of paper covered in her careful handwriting, with various crossed-out words and arrows showing where she'd made improvements to her essay. He stood there for a moment, taking in the sight of his daughter's peaceful face, her dark hair falling across her cheek. His heart swelled with a love so deep it almost hurt. Carefully, trying not to wake her, he bent down despite his aching leg and whispered in her ear, "You're my strength, kiddo." The morning sun streamed through the windows of Steel Logistics as Jack made his way through the office, his cane tapping softly against the polished floor. Something felt different today. Sarah from accounting gave him a warm smile and a knowing look. Tom from IT stopped him in the hallway to shake his hand, mentioning something about what a great kid he had. By the time Jack reached his desk, 3 different people had mentioned Lily in passing. Confused but touched, he settled into his chair and opened his laptop. An email from Alan Rodriguez, the COO, waited in his inbox. Jack's heart skipped a beat when he saw the subject line, "Your daughter's essay." The attachment showed Lily's neat handwriting, titled, "My Hero Wears a Tie." Jack's vision blurred as he read her words describing how he helped her with math homework even after long days at work, how he never complained about his injured leg, and how he treated everyone with kindness because that's what real soldiers do. She'd written about watching him go to work each day with courage, even when people weren't nice to him. A gentle knock interrupted his reading. Martha, the kind-faced receptionist, stood in his doorway with misty eyes. "That little girl of yours," she said softly. "She sees right to the heart of things, doesn't she?" Jack could only nod, his throat tight with emotion. The morning meeting brought another surprise. His team had been working on a complex logistics test. One Victoria had insisted needed 3 weeks minimum. But inspired by Jack's leadership style and clear direction, they'd found innovative solutions. "We're ready to run the final test today," announced Miguel, one of the younger team members. 2 weeks ahead of schedule, Jack looked around the conference room at his team's proud faces. "This isn't my success," he said quietly. "This is what happens when good people work together and believe in each other." The test results came in by early afternoon. Not only had they finished early, but they'd also identified 3 major efficiency improvements that would save the company millions annually. Word spread quickly through the building. At 4 o'clock, Jack received a summons to the board meeting. He entered the sleek conference room, aware of Victoria's icy stare from the head of the table. The board members sat reviewing the test results, murmuring appreciatively. "Mr. Dawson," one of the directors spoke up, "these numbers are impressive. How did your team manage this?" Before Jack could answer, Victoria cleared her throat. The room fell silent. She stood, smoothing her designer suit, her expression carefully controlled. "The logistics optimization test," she began, her voice clipped, "has exceeded expectations under Mr. Dawson's leadership." The words seemed to cost her something. The board should know that his unique approach has proven effective. It wasn't exactly warm praise, but coming from Victoria, it felt monumental. Jack noticed Alan hiding a smile behind his coffee cup. "Thank you, Miss Steele," Jack replied professionally. "But the credit belongs to the team. They just needed someone to believe in them." Several board members nodded approvingly. Victoria's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. That evening, Jack arrived home to find the small apartment filled with the warm smell of cookies. Lily stood in their tiny kitchen, wearing her mother's old apron that hung down to her feet. Flour dusted her nose and cheeks. "Daddy," she beamed, "I made celebration cookies. Mrs. Whitaker helped me with the oven," she added quickly, seeing his concerned look. "And guess what? I got an A+ on my essay." Jack hung up his jacket, smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. "About that essay," he said, pulling her into a hug. "It seems it's made quite a journey around my office." Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Really? Did people like it?" "They loved it, sweetheart, just like I do." He kissed the top of her head, flour and all. "Then maybe they'll see what I see," she said matter-of-factly, pulling a tray of slightly crooked chocolate chip cookies from the cooling rack. "That you're the bravest, kindest daddy ever." Jack's laugh came easily, surprising him with its freedom. He couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that. Lily giggled too, offering him a warm cookie. They sat at their small kitchen table, sharing cookies and milk, trading stories about their day. Jack felt a contentment he hadn't experienced in a long time. For once, He wasn't thinking about Victoria's next move or the challenges ahead. He was simply present, watching his daughter lick chocolate from her fingers and feeling grateful for this moment. "Daddy," Lily said suddenly, "you've got cookie crumbs in your tie." She reached over to brush them away, then paused. "You're smiling more today. I like it when you smile." Jack pulled her onto his lap, not caring about the flour that transferred from her apron to his work clothes. "That's because I have the world's best cheerleader," he said, making her giggle again. The evening light filtered through their kitchen window, casting warm shadows across their modest home. The smell of fresh cookies filled the air, and the sound of Lily's laughter echoed off the walls. For this brief, precious moment, everything felt right in Jack Dawson's world. The morning felt different as Jack pulled up to Lily's school. The sun seemed brighter, the air fresher. Even his leg bothered him less than usual. Lily noticed his good mood and grinned as she gathered her backpack. "You're humming, Daddy," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You haven't done that in forever." Jack touched his chin, surprised. He hadn't realized he was humming the old tune his wife used to love. "Guess I am, sweetheart. Sometimes good things just sneak up on you. Like ice cream after school?" Lily asked hopefully. "We'll see." Jack chuckled, watching her skip toward the school entrance. "Have a great day." The drive to Steel Logistics was smooth, and Jack found himself still humming as he rode the elevator to his floor. Several co-workers greeted him warmly in the hallway. Martha from accounting even stopped to show him pictures of her new grandchild. Meanwhile, 12 floors above, Bradley Cooper sat in his corner office, his face twisted with displeasure. As Senior Vice President of Operations, he'd watched Jack's rising popularity with growing resentment. The veteran support group that Jack had casually suggested was now meeting weekly in the break room. The maintenance staff had started coming to Jack with their concerns instead of through proper channels. Even some of Bradley's own team members were praising Dawson's leadership style. "Time to dig deeper," Bradley muttered, typing quickly on his keyboard. He'd called in some favors from an old college friend who now worked at the Veterans Affairs office. The information had arrived that morning in a plain manila envelope. Bradley's eyes narrowed as he reviewed the documents. Jack's military records painted a picture very different from the capable manager everyone saw. Multiple surgeries on his left leg, extensive physical therapy, regular psychiatric appointments for PTSD, notes about nightmares, anxiety triggers, occasional flashbacks. "Perfect," Bradley whispered, carefully selecting and highlighting specific passages. He began crafting a memo, choosing words like liability and unpredictable and risk factor. The final touch was adding confidential, internal review at the top in bold red letters. Down on the operations floor, Jack was reviewing shipping manifests with his team. Sarah, a young logistics coordinator, had spotted a pattern in their delivery delays. "If we adjust the routing here," she said, pointing to the screen, "we could save almost 2 hours per trip." "Good catch," Jack nodded, making notes. "Let's run some test scenarios before—" "Jack!" Alan Rodriguez, the COO, stuck his head in the door. "Got a minute?" In Alan's office, they discussed the team's latest improvements. Alan seemed genuinely pleased with their progress. "The board's noticed, Jack. Keep this up and we might be looking at expanding your department." Jack left the meeting feeling even more positive about the future. He didn't notice Bradley Cooper watching him from the end of the hallway, a thin smile on his face as he clutched a sealed envelope. In Victoria's top-floor office, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across her desk as she reviewed quarterly reports. A knock at her door made her look up with annoyance. "What is it?" Bradley entered, his expression concerned. "Miss Steele, I apologize for the interruption, but there's something you need to see." He placed the envelope on her desk. "It's about Jack Dawson." Victoria's perfectly manicured nails tapped the desk. "The limping hero! What about him?" "I've received some troubling information about his condition. Given his level of responsibility, I felt obligated to bring it to your attention." Victoria opened the envelope and began reading. Her frown deepened with each page. Bradley stood quietly, watching her reaction. "Post-traumatic stress disorder," she said slowly. "Multiple medications? Therapy sessions twice a month?" She looked up at Bradley. "Where did you get this?" "I have my sources," he said smoothly. "All completely legal, of course. But as an executive concerned with company welfare, of course." Victoria's lips curved into a cold smile. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Bradley. I'll handle it from here." After Bradley left, Victoria read through the report again, her smile growing harder. The man who had embarrassed her at the gala, who had stolen her employees' loyalty, wasn't as perfect as everyone thought. Finally, she had something concrete to use against him. "Let's see how popular you are when everyone knows how broken you really are," she whispered to the empty office. The afternoon sun was warm as Jack left work early to pick up Lily. He'd promised to help her with a science project, and for once, he was ahead on his deadlines. He found her waiting on the school steps, drawing in her notebook. "Hey, sweetheart," he called. "How about that ice cream?" Lily's face lit up. "Really?" "Really. We can walk to Murphy's." He took her backpack as she bounced alongside him. "How was school?" "We learned about the solar system." Lily chatted as they walked. "Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons?" 79? That's a lot of moons to keep track of. They stopped at the small ice cream shop on the corner. Mr. Murphy himself served them. Chocolate chip for Lily, vanilla for Jack. They sat at the outdoor table, enjoying the afternoon sun and each other's company. "Daddy," Lily asked, carefully licking her cone. "Mm-hmm. Are you happy at your new job?" Jack considered the question, watching a pair of sparrows hop around their feet looking for crumbs. "You know what? I think I am. The people there are good folks. Well, most of them anyway." "Even the mean lady boss?" Jack chuckled. "Miss Steele. She's complicated. But don't worry about her. Things are looking up for us, kiddo." Lily nodded, satisfied with his answer, and returned to her ice cream. Jack watched her, grateful for these simple moments of joy. Neither of them knew that back in her office, Victoria Steele was reviewing the final draft of a memo that would change everything. His phone buzzed with a message from Alan. "Great work today. See you tomorrow." Jack smiled and put the phone away, focusing on his daughter and their peaceful afternoon. The future felt bright, even if storm clouds were gathering unseen. Jack sat in the bright conference room, his weathered hands folded neatly on the polished table. Around him, his team members took turns presenting their quarterly results, each slide showing impressive improvements in efficiency and cost savings. The pride in their voices matched the warm glances they kept sending his way. Sarah from accounting stood up, clutching her tablet. "And thanks to Mr. Dawson's new routing system, we've cut delivery times by 30%. She smiled at Jack. His military precision really shows in the details. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Someone mentioned they'd heard about Lily's essay, and Jack felt his chest tighten with emotion. These people had become more than colleagues. They were starting to feel like family. Victoria Steele sat at the head of the table, her face unreadable. Just as the meeting seemed to be wrapping up, she cleared her throat and stood, holding a thick manila folder. "Speaking of Mr. Dawson's military background," she said, her voice cutting through the pleasant atmosphere like ice, "there are some matters we need to address." She began passing out copies of what looked like an official report. Jack's stomach dropped as he caught sight of the header. Personnel Risk Assessment. His hands began to tremble slightly, and he gripped his cane tighter under the table. "It has come to my attention," Victoria continued, her heels clicking as she paced, "that Mr. Dawson has been less than forthcoming about certain conditions." She paused for effect, savoring the moment. "According to his military records, he suffers from severe PTSD. Regular therapy sessions, medication, potential triggers, all undisclosed during his hiring process." The room fell silent. Jack felt the blood drain from his face as his colleagues began scanning the documents, their expressions shifting from confusion to concern. He could see his private medical history laid bare in black and white. Everything he'd fought so hard to overcome turned into cold statistics. "As CEO, I have to question the wisdom of placing someone with such instabilities in a position of responsibility," Victoria declared, her words precise and cutting. "How can we trust the judgment of someone who might be compromised at any moment?" Jack opened his mouth to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come. The room seemed to spin slightly, memories of battlefield chaos threatening to surface. He forced them back down, focusing on his breathing like his therapist had taught him. "I've never let my condition affect my work," he finally managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "My team's results speak for themselves." Victoria's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Results achieved under false pretenses, Mr. Dawson. You deliberately concealed your mental health status." From the corner of his eye, Jack noticed Alan Rodriguez, the COO, shifting uncomfortably. But before anyone could intervene, Victoria delivered her final blow. For the safety of our employees and the integrity of our operations, I'm recommending immediate review of Mr. Dawson's position. She turned to face him directly. Perhaps a role with less responsibility would be more appropriate for someone in your condition. The words hit him like physical blows. Jack sat there, straight-backed but breaking inside, as whispers filled the room. These people who had trusted him, looked up to him. Now they were looking at him with pity, or worse, fear. What he didn't know was that across town, in Lily's classroom, the quarterly meeting was playing on the smartboard. The teacher had put it on so the students could see how their parents' companies worked. Lily sat frozen at her desk, tears streaming down her face as she watched her father being torn apart. The meeting ended in a blur. Jack barely registered the sympathetic glances, the awkward shuffling of feet as people filed out. He somehow made it through the rest of the workday, moving on autopilot, his mind replaying Victoria's words over and over. That evening, he picked up Lily from Mrs. Whitaker's house. One look at her red-rimmed eyes told him she knew everything. The drive home was silent, heavy, with unspoken pain. As they entered their small apartment, Lily suddenly threw her arms around his waist, burying her face in his shirt. Her small body shook with sobs. "It's not fair, Daddy," she cried. "You're the bravest person I know. Why are they being so mean?" Jack's throat tightened as he stroked her hair, unable to find words that would make this better. They stood there in the dim hallway, father and daughter holding each other up. Finally, Lily lifted her tear-stained face to his. Her next words pierced straight through his heart. "Mommy says you're my daddy. God says you're my hero." Jack felt his carefully maintained composure crumbling. He struggled to hold back his own tears as he held his daughter closer, her faith in him both a balm and a burden. In that moment, he wasn't sure if he was strong enough to keep fighting, to keep proving himself worthy of her unwavering belief in him. The evening light filtered through their small window, casting long shadows across the floor as father and daughter clung to each other, their shared pain and love filling the quiet space between them. The morning sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Jack limped away from Mrs. Whitaker's house. His cane tapped a steady rhythm against the concrete, the same sound that now drew whispers and stares at work. The elderly woman had squeezed his arm when he dropped off Lily, her eyes full of understanding. "Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight inside ourselves, dear," she'd said softly. Now Jack wandered through the quiet neighborhood streets, no destination in mind. Victoria's words from yesterday echoed in his head. Unstable, unfit, liability. Each step brought a fresh wave of doubt. The weight of his service record, once a source of pride, now felt like a burden dragging him down. A city bus rumbled past, its brakes squealing. The sound yanked Jack back to another time, the screech of metal, the crack of gunfire, the desperate shouts of his men. He stumbled, catching himself against a tree trunk. His breathing came in short gasps as he fought to stay in the present. This was exactly what Victoria had exposed to everyone, the broken soldier who couldn't even handle normal city sounds. An elderly couple walking their dog crossed to the other side of the street when they saw him. Jack's jaw clenched. Was this how it would be now? People avoiding him, whispering behind his back, treating him like he might snap at any moment? He found himself in the small park where he sometimes took Lily. The playground stood empty in the morning light. Jack sank onto a bench, his leg aching from the long walk. The resignation letter was already drafted on his phone. One click would end this nightmare, this daily humiliation. He could find another job, somewhere smaller, somewhere people didn't know about his past. But Lily's face flashed in his mind, her fierce pride when she told her friends about his new job, her joy at seeing him dress up for work each morning. She believed in him with the pure, unwavering faith of a child. Could he really surrender now? A sparrow hopped closer, pecking at crumbs near his feet. Jack watched it, remembering the countless times he'd told his soldiers to focus on small, immediate things. When the memories threatened to overwhelm them, the bird's quick movements, the feel of the wooden bench beneath his hands, the distant sound of traffic. Hours passed as Jack sat there, wrestling with his thoughts. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Finally, his phone buzzed, A text from Mrs. Whitaker saying Lily was home from school. It was time to face his daughter. The walk home felt longer than usual, each step heavy with indecision. When he opened the front door, the house was quiet except for the soft clinking of metal coming from the dining room. Jack followed the sound. Lily sat at the table, carefully arranging his medals on the polished wood. The Purple Heart caught the afternoon light, its purple ribbon slightly faded but still proud. Next to it lay his Bronze Star, combat infantry badge, and the other symbols of his service. She'd even found his old unit patches, laying them out with reverent care. "Lily." His voice cracked. She looked up, her eyes serious beyond her years. "These show who you are, Daddy, not what that mean lady says." Jack's throat tightened as he moved closer. His fingers traced the edge of the Bronze Star, awarded for leading his team through a firefight to rescue trapped civilians. He remembered the weight of responsibility, the clarity of purpose, the unwavering commitment to his mission and his men. The citation says, "Extraordinary heroism," Lily read from the weathered certificate she'd also found. "That doesn't go away just because you got hurt, right?" Jack sank into the chair beside her, overwhelmed by the simple wisdom of her words. Each medal told a story not just of combat, but of choices, choosing courage over fear, duty over self-preservation, integrity over expedience. Victoria hadn't stripped him of those qualities. Only he could do that, by choosing to quit. Lily leaned against his shoulder, her small hand covering his larger one. "Mrs. Whitaker says sometimes God gives us hard things so we can show others how to be brave." She picked up the Purple Heart, studying its surface. "Like how you show me every day." The tears Jack had been holding back finally spilled over. He pulled his daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. The medals gleamed on the table, not just decorations, but reminders of who he was at his core. A soldier, a leader, a man who didn't quit when the mission got hard. That evening, after Lily went to bed, Jack knelt beside his own bed for the first time in months. The last light of sunset painted the walls in soft gold as he bowed his head. "Lord," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "give me strength to fight the right way." His fingers worked over his cane as he continued to pray, not with anger or pride, but with the same courage and integrity you helped me show on the battlefield. Help me remember who I am, not for my sake, but for Lily's, and for others who might need to see that broken doesn't mean beaten. The medals still lay on the dining room table, catching the last rays of sunlight. Through his open bedroom door, Jack could see them glinting, silent witnesses to battles fought and won, reminding him that tomorrow would bring another chance to prove his worth, not through force, but through unwavering dignity and grace. The elevator doors opened to a hushed office floor. Jack stepped out, his cane making a soft tap against the polished tiles. He'd arrived early, hoping to avoid the stares and whispers that would surely follow yesterday's humiliation. His shoulders felt heavy as he made his way to his desk, each step a reminder of the wounds both visible and hidden. The morning light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across his workspace. Jack pulled out a cardboard box from under his desk and began placing his few personal items inside: a framed photo of Lily, a coffee mug she'd painted for him, and a small wooden cross that had been his wife's. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice startled him. Sarah from accounting stood there, arms crossed, her usually cheerful face stern. "Just clearing out my desk," Jack mumbled, not meeting her eyes. "Like hell you are." Sarah stepped forward, reaching into the box and pulling out the photo of Lily. "Remember last month when my son was in the hospital? You stayed late 3 nights straight to help me catch up on reports so I could be with him." Before Jack could respond, Mike from maintenance appeared. "You're not going anywhere, sir." The older man's voice was firm. "When my daughter needed help with her college applications, you spent your lunch break reviewing them with her. Said it reminded you of helping your unit buddies with paperwork." More people began gathering around his desk. Jenny, the shy intern he'd mentored, pushed through the small crowd. "Mr. Dawson, you taught me everything I know about logistics. You never made me feel stupid for asking questions, even the really basic ones." "But, Victoria," Jack started, his voice rough with emotion. "Victoria doesn't speak for us," declared Carlos, the head janitor. "Remember when my little Maria was sick? You not only covered my shift bonus from your own pocket, but you also found us a specialist who could help her." The crowd grew larger. Every person had a story to share. Moments where Jack had shown kindness, patience, or understanding. Times when he'd gone above and beyond, never seeking recognition or praise. "You helped me practice for my citizenship test," said Anna from HR, her eyes shining with tears. "Stayed late every Tuesday for 6 weeks straight. When my car broke down," added Tom from it, "you drove 30 minutes out of your way to pick me up for work. Did it for 2 whole weeks, until I could afford repairs." Jack's hands trembled as he gripped his cane. The box of belongings sat forgotten on his desk as more colleagues approached, each with their own testament to his character. "We've seen your leadership," said Richard, a senior analyst, "not just during crises like the gala, but every single day. The way you treat everyone with respect, from the cleaning staff to the executives. That's real leadership, not whatever game Victoria's playing." Patricia, the office manager who'd worked at Steel Logistics for 20 years, stepped forward. "I've never seen this office more united or efficient than under your guidance. We're not letting you leave because of one person's prejudice." Jack swallowed hard, looking at the determined faces around him. These weren't just colleagues anymore. They were friends who'd become like family. Their words wrapped around him like a protective shield, pushing back against the doubt and shame that had threatened to overwhelm him. "We're filing a formal complaint with the board," announced Sarah. "What Victoria did was discrimination, plain and simple. We've all signed it already." "You don't have to," Jack began, but Mike cut him off. "We want to. You've shown us what real strength looks like. Not bullying or intimidation, but kindness and perseverance. Now it's our turn to show some strength for you." Jenny stepped forward, holding out a thick manila envelope. "We also wrote our own letters about how you've impacted each of us. The board needs to know who you really are, not just what's in some leaked report." Jack's vision blurred as he took the envelope, feeling its weight, not just physical but emotional. Each letter inside represented someone who saw him not as broken or damaged, but as whole and worthy. That evening, Jack sat with Lily at their small kitchen table, sharing the day's events. Her blue eyes grew wide as he described how his coworkers had rallied around him. "They really did all that, Daddy?" she asked, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. "They did, sweetheart." Jack's voice was soft with wonder. Every single one of them had a story to tell. Lily's face lit up with a smile, even as tears sparkled in her eyes. "See? You're not alone, Daddy." She reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Just like I told you, God makes sure we're never really alone." Jack squeezed back, feeling the warmth of her small hand in his. In that moment, surrounded by his daughter's love and the memory of his colleagues' support, he felt stronger than he had in years. Not despite his wounds, but because of how they'd taught him to understand others' pain and how to help heal it. 2 weeks had passed since the workers' show of solidarity. The morning sun gleamed off the Steel Logistics Tower as employees hustled through security, preparing for what should have been their biggest triumph, the signing of a billion-dollar international shipping contract that would cement their position in the global market. Jack sat at his desk, reviewing logistics reports one final time. His cane leaned against the wall beside him, and a fresh cup of coffee steamed next to his keyboard. The photo of Lily smiled at him from its silver frame, reminding him why he fought so hard to stay. Suddenly, the screens went black. All of them. The gentle hum of computers died, plunging the office into an eerie silence. "What just happened?" someone called out. Within seconds, phones started ringing off the hook. Panic spread across the floor like wildfire. Jack watched as junior executives rushed past his desk, their faces pale with fear. "The servers are down," IT personnel shouted from the end of the hall. "Everything's crashed. Shipping schedules, tracking systems, client data." The elevators dinged repeatedly as board members arrived for an emergency meeting. Jack could hear raised voices from the conference room. Through the glass walls, he saw Victoria Steele pacing, her usual composure cracking as she ran her hands through her perfectly styled hair. "We have less than 4 hours before the contract signing," Alan Rodriguez, the COO, announced grimly to the gathering crowd. "If we can't get our systems back up, we'll lose everything." Jack observed the chaos unfolding around him. Young analysts were crying at their desks. Middle managers argued in clusters. Victoria's voice carried through the office as she shouted at the IT department over the phone. Something clicked in Jack's mind. The familiar calm of combat settled over him. The same feeling he'd had in the desert when his unit faced impossible odds. He grabbed his cane and stood up. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. Victoria turned, her mascara slightly smudged. Permission to take point on this? She stared at him, pride warring with desperation on her face. The room fell silent. "What could you possibly do?" she asked, but the usual bite was missing from her voice. Jack limped forward, his cane tapping steadily against the floor. "In Delta Force, we had a saying, chaos is just opportunity in disguise. This is no different than coordinating a rescue mission under fire." He turned to address the room. "We need 3 teams. First team, gather all paper records, shipping manifests, and backup documentation from the last 48 hours. Second team, create a manual tracking system using the conference room walls. I want every active shipment mapped out. Third team, client communications. We prove to them we can handle this old school." To everyone's surprise, Victoria didn't object. She watched, mouth slightly open, as people began organizing themselves according to Jack's instructions. He pointed to a young IT specialist who was hyperventilating in the corner. "What's your name?" "Tommy," the kid squeaked. "Tommy, you're with me. We need to understand exactly what went wrong without getting lost in the technical weeds. Break it down like you're explaining it to a 10-year-old. For the next hour, Jack coordinated the emergency response like a military operation. The conference room transformed into a command center, with colored sticky notes tracking shipments across wall-sized maps. Runners carried messages between floors since email was down. Jack's calm presence seemed to steady everyone around him. He noticed Victoria standing in the doorway, watching him work. Their eyes met briefly, and for the first time, he saw something different in her gaze. Not contempt, but something that might have been respect. "Sir," Tommy called out, "I think I found the problem, but fixing it, we'd need to manually restart systems in a specific sequence across all our global offices." Jack nodded, checking his watch. 2 hours until the contract signing. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. Lily picked up on the second ring. "Daddy?" "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, stepping away from the chaos for a moment. "Listen, Daddy has to fight another mission tonight." "Like in the army?" she asked, understanding in her young voice. "Something like that. Mrs. Whitaker will stay with you until I get home, okay?" "Okay, Daddy. I'll pray for you." Jack smiled, touching the photo on his desk. "That's my girl. I love you." "Love you too, Daddy. Go be a hero." He hung up and turned back to the room, where dozens of eyes watched him expectantly. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. Not the burden of combat this time, but the future of every person in this building. "All right," he announced, voice steady and strong. "Let's get to work. Tommy, walk me through that restart sequence. We've got a company to save." The crisis room buzzed with nervous energy as department heads filed in, their faces drawn with worry. Computer screens lining the walls displayed cascading error messages and flatlined system metrics. The room fell silent as Jack Dawson stepped forward, his cane tapping steadily against the polished floor. "Listen up," Jack said, his voice carrying the same calm authority that had once guided soldiers through combat zones. "I know we're all scared, but right now, fear is our enemy. We need clear heads and steady hands." He moved to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. Despite his limp, his movements were precise and purposeful. The room watched as he began drawing a detailed diagram, breaking down their crisis into manageable segments. "We'll operate in teams," Jack explained, drawing from his military experience. "Alpha Team will focus on system recovery. Beta Team handles client communications. Charlie Team manages internal operations. Delta Team coordinates with our international partners." Victoria Steele stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching as Jack commanded the room's attention. Her usual sharp remarks died on her lips as she observed the transformation in her employees' faces, from panic to focused determination. "Martinez," Jack called out to their lead programmer. "You're heading Alpha Team. Take Williams and Chen. Set up in Conference Room A. I want hourly updates on system restoration progress." Sarah Martinez nodded, already pulling out her laptop. The fear in her eyes had been replaced by resolve. "Peterson," Jack continued, addressing their head of PR. "Beta Team is yours. Draft emergency communications for our clients. Be honest but reassuring. No corporate doublespeak. People respect straight talk." He moved through the assignments methodically, placing each person where their strengths would shine. His military training showed in every detail, establishing clear chains of command, backup plans, and communication protocols. "Remember," Jack said, his voice softening slightly, "every person in this room matters. From it to maintenance. We're one unit now. Watch out for each other. If you're stuck, ask for help. No lone wolves today." Victoria shifted uncomfortably as she noticed how naturally people turned to Jack for guidance. The same man she'd mocked and tried to drive out was now holding her company together. Teams dispersed to their assigned positions, but Jack wasn't finished. He moved from station to station, checking in, offering encouragement, solving problems. His cane never slowed him down. If anything, people seemed to move with more purpose after seeing his determination. "Sir," a young intern approached him timidly. "The backup servers in basement 3 need checking, but the elevator's down." Jack smiled kindly. "Then we take the stairs. Lead the way." Victoria watched as Jack disappeared down the stairwell with the intern, his cane tapping out a steady rhythm. She followed at a distance, witnessing as he guided the young man through the server check, teaching while they worked. Hours ticked by. The crisis room became their command center, with Jack coordinating efforts across all teams. People brought him coffee, which grew cold as he focused on the tasks at hand. His phone buzzed occasionally, messages from Lily that he answered briefly but warmly, never letting his personal concerns distract from the mission. When the evening sun cast long shadows through the windows, Victoria finally approached him. "Mr. Dawson," she said stiffly, "perhaps you should take a break. You've been on your feet all day." Jack looked up from the status reports he was reviewing. "Thank you, Miss Steele, but I'm fine." His voice was professional, without a hint of resentment for her past actions. "There's too much at stake for breaks right now." She noticed how he gripped his cane tighter, the only sign of his fatigue. The man she'd dismissed as damaged goods was proving to be the strongest person in the building. As midnight approached, Jack stood at the center of the crisis room, leaning heavily on his cane but his voice never wavering as he coordinated the overnight shifts. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, but his focus remained sharp. "Alpha Team, what's your status?" he called out. "System restoration at 60%, sir," Martinez reported. "Estimated 4 hours until completion." Jack nodded, making notes on his tablet. "Beta Team, client status?" "Most are standing by, sir," Peterson responded. "Your military background helped. They're treating this like a tactical situation, just as you suggested." Victoria stood in the doorway, watching as Jack checked each team's progress. She saw what she'd been too proud to acknowledge before. True leadership wasn't about power or position. It was about serving others, about putting the mission before personal comfort. The night wore on. Jack remained standing, though several people had offered him chairs. His cane bore more of his weight now, but his spirit seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. During a quiet moment, when most teams were deep in their tasks, Jack looked at a photo of Lily on his phone. He touched the screen gently, then straightened his shoulders and whispered to himself, "Failure is not an option." The words carried the weight of both his military past and his present responsibility, to his daughter, to his colleagues, and to the company that had almost broken him. But Jack Dawson hadn't broken in combat, and he wouldn't break now. Victoria, overhearing his whispered words, finally understood what real strength looked like. It wasn't in her corner office or her expensive suits. It was in this man's quiet determination to complete his mission, no matter the personal cost. Teams continued working through the night, drawing strength from Jack's unwavering presence. His tactical approach had transformed a corporate crisis into a winnable battle, and every person in that building was ready to fight alongside him. The digital clock on the wall blinked midnight as Jack Dawson made his way through the maze of cubicles, his cane tapping softly against the carpet. The office buzzed with the quiet desperation of exhausted workers hunched over keyboards, their faces lit by the blue glow of computer screens. "Hey, Sarah," Jack said, placing a fresh water bottle next to a young analyst who hadn't looked up from her monitor in hours. "Take 5 minutes. Clear your head." Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. "But the system diagnostics will make more sense after a short break," Jack finished with a gentle smile. "Trust me, I've learned this the hard way." Moving through the office, Jack noticed the signs of fatigue he recognized from his military days: the 1,000-yard stares, the slumped shoulders, the trembling hands reaching for empty coffee cups. It reminded him of those long nights in Afghanistan, when his unit had to stay alert despite exhaustion, their lives depending on maintaining focus. "Remember, folks," he called out, his voice carrying the calm authority that had once steadied nervous soldiers, "we're not just fixing computers here. We're protecting jobs, securing futures. Every person in this company has a family counting on them, just like our clients do." He paused at Marcus's desk, where the IT specialist was furiously typing. "How about a joke to keep the spirits up?" Jack offered. "What did the computer do at lunchtime?" Marcus looked up, dark circles under his eyes. "What? Had a bite?" Jack delivered with an exaggerated wink. The terrible pun earned him a mix of groans and tired chuckles. That was exactly what he wanted, a moment of levity to break the tension. "That was awful, Mr. Dawson," Lisa from accounting called out. But she was smiling for the first time in hours. Jack made his way to the break room, where he started brewing fresh coffee. His leg was killing him from all the walking, but he ignored the pain. He'd learned in Delta Force that discomfort was temporary, but giving up was forever. The familiar scent of coffee brought back memories of pre-mission briefings, of huddling with his team in the dark before dawn. Back then, he'd been responsible for bringing his soldiers home. Now, he was responsible for saving livelihoods. "1:15 he announced, returning with a tray of steaming cups. "Time for status report Alpha." It was a system he'd implemented 3 hours ago, borrowing from military protocol. Every 15 minutes, team leaders would give quick updates. It kept everyone informed and maintained a rhythm to their work. "Database team," he called out. 50% of corrupted files recovered, came the response from the far corner. "Network security, firewalls holding. No new breach attempts. Client communications? Asian markets notified. European offices coming online in 4 hours." Jack nodded, mentally mapping their progress like he used to track troop movements. "Good work, people. We're making headway." He noticed Tommy, a young intern, nodding off at his desk. Walking over, Jack placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Tommy, grab that couch in the break room. 20 minutes. But, sir, that's an order, son. You'll do better work after a power nap." "I learned that in the sandbox." As Tommy trudged off, Jack remembered his own commander teaching him that lesson years ago. Sometimes, leadership meant forcing people to take care of themselves. Around 2 a.m., he gathered everyone for a quick stretch break. "Stand up, reach for the ceiling," he demonstrated, his own muscles protesting. "Now touch your toes, or try to anyway," he added with a self-deprecating chuckle, making light of his own limited mobility. The simple exercise got blood flowing and brought a few smiles. Jack knew from experience that physical movement could reset mental fatigue. "You know what this reminds me of?" he said as they stretched. "Night training in Georgia. Except instead of mosquitoes the size of helicopters, we've got angry servers. And trust me, the servers are easier to deal with." More laughter. Good. Laughter meant oxygen. Oxygen meant clearer thinking. By 3 a.m., the worst of the crisis was showing signs of breaking. Jack had organized the teams into shifts, ensuring no one worked more than 4 hours straight without a real break. He'd seen too many good soldiers make mistakes from exhaustion, and he wouldn't let that happen here. "Mr. Dawson?" It was Sarah again, her voice stronger after her rest. "We've got the first section of the trading platform back online. Excellent work," he said, then raised his voice. "Hear that, everyone? First victory of the night. Who's next?" The announcement energized the room. Jack could feel the shift in atmosphere from desperate endurance to determined progress. He'd felt it before, in battle situations when the tide finally turned. At 4 a.m., he organized a food run. "Can't fight on an empty stomach," he declared, ordering enough sandwiches and energy bars for everyone. He made sure each person ate something, just as he used to check his soldiers' ration consumption during long operations. "Sir?" Tommy had returned from his nap and was now working with renewed focus. "How do you stay so calm?" Jack leaned on his cane, considering the question. "Because panic never fixed anything, Tommy. I've seen worse situations turn around, just by keeping a clear head and trusting your team." As the night deepened toward morning, Jack continued his rounds, offering encouragement, technical suggestions, and the occasional terrible joke. His leg throbbed and his back ached, but he kept moving. The pain was an old friend by now, one he'd learned to accept without surrendering to it. Finally, at 5:30 a.m., The first rays of dawn began to peek through the office windows. Jack stood by the glass, watching the sky lighten over the city. The status reports were increasingly positive, systems coming back online, data being recovered, crisis protocols holding steady. For the first time since the chaos began, he allowed himself to take a deep, slow breath. The familiar weight of responsibility sat on his shoulders, but now it was balanced by the lightness of hope. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they could see the clearing ahead. Looking at his tired but determined team, Jack felt the same pride he'd known watching his soldiers execute a difficult mission. Different battlefield, same human spirit. He took another breath, letting it fill his lungs with the promise of morning, before turning back to the task at hand. The first rays of morning sun filtered through the office windows as engineers made their final keystrokes. The room held its breath. Jack leaned forward on his cane, his tired eyes fixed on the main monitor. 24 hours of non-stop work had brought them to this moment. "Systems check complete," announced Sarah from IT, her voice trembling. "Starting reboot sequence." The massive screen at the front of the crisis room displayed loading bars. One by one, they began filling up. Green lights started blinking across the board. Jack's grip tightened on his cane as the final system check approached 100%. "Come on," whispered Tom from accounting. "Come on." The final bar reached completion. A pleasant chime sounded through the speakers. "All systems operational," Sarah shouted, jumping up from her chair. "The contract data is secure." The room erupted in cheers. People who hadn't slept in over a day found new energy, hugging each other and crying with relief. The billion-dollar deal was safe. Steel Logistics would survive. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, letting out a long breath. His leg ached fiercely from standing all night. But it didn't matter now. They'd done it. "Mr. Dawson," called out Jeremy, the young intern, pointing at the TV mounted on the wall. "Look!" The morning news was already covering the story. Images of the Steel Logistics building flashed across the screen as the reporter spoke. In what's being called a miraculous save, Steel Logistics avoided catastrophic failure thanks to the leadership of Jack Dawson, a disabled veteran who coordinated the emergency response. Sources say Dawson's military experience proved crucial in organizing the successful recovery effort. Employees gathered around the TV, beaming with pride. Some pulled out their phones, recording the coverage. The story was spreading fast. "They're calling you a hero, sir," Jeremy said, grinning. Jack shook his head modestly. "We did this together. Every person in this room is a hero." More news crews were arriving outside the building. The phone lines were lighting up with calls from major business networks. The story of how a broken soldier had saved one of the country's largest logistics companies was catching fire. In her office, Victoria Steele watched the coverage in silence. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she set down her coffee cup. The man she had mocked and humiliated had just saved her company. Her father's legacy. Everything. The weight of her actions crashed down on her all at once. She remembered her cruel words at his interview, the constant harassment, the public humiliation when she'd exposed his PTSD. Each memory felt like a stone in her stomach. "Miss Steele," her assistant poked her head in. "The board of directors is calling. They want to speak with you and Mr. Dawson immediately." Victoria nodded numbly. She stood up, smoothing her designer's suit, but her usual confidence was gone. For the first time in her career, she felt small. In the crisis room, employees were still celebrating when Victoria entered. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to watch as she approached Jack, who stood quietly by the window. "Mr. Dawson," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "The board would like to speak with us." Jack nodded professionally, maintaining his dignity despite his exhaustion. As they walked toward the conference room, employees started clapping. Slowly at first, then building to thunderous applause. They weren't clapping for Victoria. Their eyes were fixed on Jack, the man who had led them through the night with unwavering strength and kindness. Victoria felt the sting of tears threatening to form. She blinked them back, but the pressure in her chest remained. This man, this soldier she had deemed unworthy, had shown more leadership in one night than she had in years. The board meeting was brief but impactful. The directors praised Jack's handling of the crisis, noting how his military experience had proven invaluable. They spoke of promotions, bonuses, press conferences. Jack accepted their praise with characteristic humility. As they left the conference room, Victoria stopped in the hallway. "Mr. Dawson," she called out, her voice catching slightly. I need to say something." Jack turned to face her, leaning on his cane. There was no anger in his eyes, no satisfaction at her discomfort, just quiet patience. "I was wrong," she said, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "About everything. The way I treated you. It was inexcusable. I let my pride blind me. And She paused, struggling. "I'm sorry." Jack studied her for a moment. "Thank you, Miss Steele," he said simply, without malice or triumph. The main lobby was packed with reporters when they returned downstairs. Cameras flashed as Jack emerged. Questions flew from all directions about his military background, his disability, his leadership style. But Jack's attention was drawn to something else entirely. Through the glass doors, he could see a familiar figure bouncing excitedly on the sidewalk. Lily had arrived with Mrs. Whitaker, unable to wait any longer to see her father. "Excuse me," Jack said to the reporters, making his way to the exit. The morning sunlight was bright and warm as he stepped outside. His body ached, his legs screamed for rest. But none of that mattered when he saw Lily's face. "Daddy!" she cried, running toward him. Jack opened his arms, and Lily crashed into him with the force of pure love. He held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. After everything, the crisis, the victory, Victoria's apology, this was the only moment that truly mattered. "You did it, Daddy," Lily whispered into his chest. "I knew you would." Jack hugged his daughter closer, grateful for her unwavering faith. Behind them, cameras clicked, and reporters called out questions, but Jack remained focused on the small girl in his arms. In her embrace, he wasn't the hero from the news or the veteran who saved the company. He was simply her father, and that was the only title he'd ever needed. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steel logistics building as employees filed into the main conference room. Word had spread quickly about an emergency all-hands meeting, and the atmosphere crackled with curiosity and tension. Jack Dawson sat quietly in the middle row, his cane propped against his chair, while his colleagues whispered and speculated around him. Victoria Steele stood at the podium, looking different than anyone had ever seen her. Gone was her usual Ice Queen composure. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edges of the lectern, and her perfectly styled hair seemed slightly disheveled, as if she'd been running her fingers through it nervously. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Today, we witnessed something extraordinary. Our company faced potential ruin, and one man led us through the darkness." Her gaze found Jack in the crowd, and for the first time, there was no trace of contempt in her eyes. "But before I address that, I need to confess something." Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers curled tighter around the podium. "When Jack Dawson first walked into my office for an interview, I saw only what I wanted to see: a limitation, a weakness. Her voice caught. "I mocked him. I called him damaged goods. I treated him with cruelty that shames me to my core." Tears began to well in Victoria's eyes, something no one in the company had ever witnessed. "This man, whom I dismissed as broken, has saved me not once, but twice. First at the charity gala, when he protected me from physical harm, and now by saving our entire company from disaster." The tears were flowing freely now, streaming down her face and leaving trails in her perfect makeup. "I mocked the very man God sent to rescue me," she said, her voice breaking. "My pride and prejudice nearly cost us everything. Not just our contracts and our business, but our humanity." Jack sat very still, his expression gentle but unreadable. Around him, employees dabbed at their own eyes, moved by this unprecedented display of vulnerability from their normally steely CEO. "Jack," Victoria said, looking directly at him now, "I apologize. Not just privately, but here, in front of everyone. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. You've shown me that true leadership isn't about power or control. It's about service, humility, and lifting others up. You've led with dignity and grace, even in the face of my cruelty." Jack slowly rose, leaning slightly on his cane. The room fell silent. "Miss Steele," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed space, "I accept your apology." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But if I may say something." Victoria nodded, wiping at her tears with a tissue someone had handed her. True strength isn't about who's in charge or who has power over others, Jack continued. It's about having the courage to be compassionate, especially when it's difficult. It's about seeing the worth in every person, from the janitor to the CEO. That's what I learned in Delta Force. A team is only as strong as how we treat our most vulnerable member. Victoria nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. The past 24 hours showed what we can accomplish when we work together, when we value each person's contribution, Jack said. That's the real victory here, not saving the contract, but saving our humanity. Spontaneously, people began to stand. First one, then another, until the entire room was on their feet, applauding. The sound swelled, filling the conference room with a thunderous standing ovation. Victoria stepped down from the podium and walked directly to Jack. In front of everyone, she extended her hand. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible above the applause, "for teaching me what real strength looks like." Jack shook her hand firmly, nodding once. The gesture was simple but profound, a moment of genuine reconciliation witnessed by all. As the applause finally died down, Victoria wiped her eyes one final time and managed a wobbly smile. "Starting tomorrow, we're going to do things differently around here. Every person matters, every voice counts, and we'll never forget the lesson Mr. Dawson taught us about true leadership." The meeting dispersed slowly, with people stopping to shake Jack's hand or pat him on the back. He accepted their gestures with characteristic humility, eager to get home to Lily. When he finally made it to his car, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. He found Lily waiting in the passenger seat, having been dropped off by Mrs. Whitaker. Her face lit up as he slid behind the wheel. "How was the meeting, Daddy?" she asked, studying his face carefully. "Well, sweetheart," Jack said, starting the engine. "Remember Miss Steele, the boss lady?" Lily nodded solemnly. "The mean one?" "She's not so mean anymore," Jack said gently. "She apologized to everyone today. She even cried." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? See? Even the mean boss lady cried." Jack couldn't help but chuckle softly at his daughter's simple but profound observation. Starting the car, he headed for home, grateful for the weight that had been lifted from his shoulders, and even more grateful for the little girl beside him who had never lost faith in him, even when others had. The Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees. Jack Dawson walked along the winding park path, his daughter's small hand tucked securely in his. His cane tapped softly against the ground, but today the sound didn't bother him. It was just another part of their peaceful morning rhythm. "Look, Daddy," Lily bounced excitedly, pointing to a family of ducks gliding across the pond. "Can we feed them, please?" Jack reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small paper bag of breadcrumbs they'd brought from home. "Remember what I taught you," he said warmly. "Nice and gentle so we don't scare them." Lily took the bag with careful hands, her face scrunched in concentration. She tossed small handfuls toward the water, giggling as the ducks paddled eagerly toward their offerings. "They're so pretty," she whispered, watching the sunlight dance off their feathers. Jack's heart swelled as he watched his daughter. Her blue dress swished around her knees as she scattered the crumbs, and her laughter echoed across the water. These simple moments, just being her father, watching her joy, meant more than any corporate victory. Across the park, partially hidden by a cluster of oak trees, Victoria Steele stood with Alan Rodriguez. They'd both come early for their usual Sunday morning planning meeting at the nearby coffee shop, but found themselves pausing at the touching scene before them. "I've been so wrong, Alan," Victoria said softly, her usual sharp edge completely gone from her voice. "Look at them. All this time I thought leadership meant being tough, being feared, but he leads with such gentleness." Alan nodded, his experienced eyes taking in both the scene and Victoria's reaction. "That's what I saw in him from the beginning," he said. "True strength isn't about domination. It's about lifting others up. Jack understands that instinctively." They watched as Jack helped Lily balance on the edge of a low wall, his strong hands ensuring she wouldn't fall while letting her feel brave enough to try. His military precision and corporate effectiveness were still there, but softened into something beautiful by fatherly love. "I have to change," Victoria whispered, more to herself than to Alan. "Everything about how I run the company, how I treat people. It all has to change. She thought about how Jack had saved both her life and her company, never once seeking revenge for her cruelty. He showed me what real leadership looks like. Alan squeezed her shoulder gently. That's why God puts people in our path, Victoria. Sometimes we need to see something lived out before we can understand it. By the pond, Jack and Lily had finished feeding the ducks and found a comfortable bench in the sunday. Jack stretched his leg out, enjoying the warmth on his old injury. For the first time in years, the pain felt like nothing more than a reminder of the journey that had brought him here. Daddy? Lily climbed onto the bench beside him. Are you happy now? Jack pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Very happy, sweetheart. And the mean boss lady isn't mean anymore, right? Jack chuckled softly. No, she's not mean anymore. Sometimes people just need time to learn and grow. Like those ducks we fed, they were scared at first, but then they learned to trust us. Lily considered this, her small face thoughtful. Is that why you didn't get mad at her? Because you knew she could learn? That's part of it, Jack said, amazed as always by his daughter's insight. But mostly because being angry doesn't help anyone. It's better to show kindness and let God handle the rest. From their vantage point, Victoria and Alan could see the tender exchange. Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes, remembering how she'd once mocked this man as damaged goods. Now she saw the truth. His supposed weakness had been strength all along, and her supposed strength had been weakness. I don't deserve his forgiveness, she murmured. That's the beauty of grace, Alan replied. None of us deserve it. That's what makes it so powerful when it's given freely. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the park and painting everything in soft gold. Jack helped Lily collect a few pretty leaves for her scrapbook, his movements natural despite the cane. His daughter's presence made him forget any limitations, made him feel whole and strong and needed. Lily gathered her treasures and then climbed into Jack's lap on the bench, curling against his chest like she used to do when she was smaller. Her voice was soft and happy as she whispered, We made it, Daddy. Jack smiled into the sunrise, holding his daughter close. The morning light caught the silver in his hair and the laugh lines around his eyes, badges of a life well lived, of battles fought and won. His future at Steel Logistics was secure now, but that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was right here in his arms, the title of Daddy, the love of his daughter, and the peace they'd found together. The sun continued its ascent, promising a beautiful day ahead. Jack kissed the top of Lily's head, grateful for these quiet moments that made all the struggles worthwhile. They had indeed made it, not just to safety or security, but to something far more precious. They had made it home. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Dawson, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.